I feel like knowing the name of something, anterior mid-cingulate cortex, doesn't fundamentally change us. But one thing I like about biology is that willpower, if somebody feels they don't have it, feels like this thing that other people have. But everybody, unless they're brain damaged, like a hole through their head, has two anterior mid-cingulate cortex, one on each side of their brain. It's just a question of opening the portal. And the portal, I'm going to say 10 times and forgive me, is I think people go, oh, I do hard things. I do sets to failure, and then I do forced reps. I love training with weights. I love doing sets to failure. I even like forced reps. But guess what? I like forced reps. So I'll tell you, they don't build my anterior mid-cingulate cortex. Because I like to do it.
That's right.
Anything you like to do is not going to enhance this aspect of willpower. And it seems so obvious once you hear it. You kind of go, oh yeah, of course. But I think you really close that loop for people when you share what you're sharing today. When you're trying to explain, the friction is the critical ingredient.
Right.
And I think people think, oh, if it's effort, well, then I'm getting better. That's part of it, necessary but not sufficient, as we say in science. But the suck part, the being haunted, the stick, those are the levers. Those are the gears. And without those, this thing that you're talking about, David Goggins, as a verb, I sometimes make the joke, but it's not a joke.
Right.
Goggins is a name and it's a verb. People go, I'm going to Goggins that. Right. But that's, I think, again, I'm not a psychologist, but I think that's what you're talking about. The stick, the friction, being haunted. It's the suck part that grows this anterior mid-cingulate cortex.
When something sucks so bad in life, very few people want to go back. They're happy they graduated. I realized I'm the same way. I don't want to go back. I have to go back. I must go back. Because that is exactly where all the knowledge of my life exists, was back there. How I grew a will was constantly doing these things. To now, it's just life. I wake up, while it still sucks, it's just life. You don't sit back and like, oh my God, like I have days I don't want to do it, but I know I'm going to do it. I know from years of just doing it. Human beings need to hear this. They need to stop hearing these hacks on this and that. There's no hack, bro. There is no life hack. To grow that thing, how do you grow it? Do it and do it and do it and do it. That's the hack.
So I have a question about empathy. And there's a difference between no excuses and empathy. And even in my personal relationships, I want to work on my empathy. I can be very candid. I see the solution. I'm like, boom, do this, this, and this. And sometimes I just don't feel the other person. And I'm curious how you see empathy, being about that no excuses life. And there's a small difference, but I'm curious how you see empathy.
That's why she's in my life. I got none of that shit. Straight up. I want to be great. And I have a thing called the foxhole mentality. A lot of us got motherfuckers from high school and college and grade school, losers, that we came up with. But them motherfuckers ain't worth shit. I can't have you in my foxhole, man. It's a fighting position. I'm going to war now, man. I'm going to war every day in my life because I want to be great. I can't speak this way to everybody because people take it so wrong and so sensitive. I'm telling you right now, man, empathy, there's a spot for it, but not when you're trying to be great. The thick skin, the tough way is the only way. And people got to be able to handle those hard conversations around you because there's managers and there's leaders. A manager makes sure you clock in every day. Okay? A lot of leaders have become managers. You want to be a leader. A leader takes you, knows how to talk to you and not baby you so you can become the best you can be. And empathy, a lot of times, about this much. Have about this much. But the second you stay in empathy too long, you just up your whole team. So make sure, teach them, not empathy, teach them thick skin so they can get better. It's not here to hurt you. It's here to help you. This event came up called the Badwater 135, 135-mile race through Death Valley in the summertime. I didn't know that was even humanly possible to run that far. I thought it was a stage race. I thought you like put your shoes on, ran 15 miles, set up a barbecue, camped out, and then did it again the next day. It was a 48-hour race. I went out there. So I called this guy up named Chris Kosman. Chris Kosman was the race director. He said to me, basically, you have to run 100 miles in 24 hours or less to qualify. I never run past 20 miles in my entire life. And up until now, I probably ran 20 miles this entire year. So he says, I call him up on a Wednesday. He says, you know what? There's a race on Saturday. And if you run 100 miles in 24 hours, I will consider you in my race. So I wasn't real smart growing up, and obviously I wasn't real smart right now. So I did the math. The math was like less than a 15-minute mile. So I said, you know what? I can walk this. Dumbest decision I made in my entire life. Went out there about 250 pounds, and I get to mile 50. So this is in San Diego, November, to run a 1 mile track where you go as many times as you can around 1 mile track for 24 hours. I get to mile 50 in about 12, 13 hours. I sit down. I sit in this blue lawn chair. I saw my ex-wife every single mile. I got Ritz crackers in Mileplex with my nutrition. By mile 70, I haven't gone to the bathroom one time, no water. That Mileplex tastes like hell, and the Ritz cracker is a ball in my mouth. This is where I really realized that, so I'm already a Navy SEAL. This is when I realized that we only use 40% of our mind. This is when I started going crazy with mindset and being a scientist of the mind. We go, I'm at mile 70. I look at my ex-wife. When you sit down not having to go in the bathroom for 12 hours, what must you do? Go to the bathroom. So I sit down and I look at her. It's the farthest I've ever gone in my entire life. 7 miles. I'm happy. I'm feeling good. And I can't get up to go to the bathroom. It's literally from me to end the stage. So I look at her and I said, honey, do you love me? She goes, why? I go, okay, I can't stand up. My blood pressure's all messed up. I'm going to take a shit on myself right now. So I went bath my back and I started peeing blood down my leg. And my ex-wife's like, oh my God, you got to stop. This is when I realized throughout my whole life, all the bad times, all the good times, you know what? I'm not going to quit yet. Let me get better. Let me fix my blood pressure. Let me get some potassium, sodium, nutrition in my body. Let me see if I can fix myself. I said, if I can just walk 1 more mile after being in the worst shape of my entire life, this would change everything for me mentally going forward. From this kid who came from dirt and nothing, who couldn't read until he was a junior in high school and is now here. I walked a mile. I said, maybe I can walk 1 more mile. Maybe I can walk another mile. At mile 81, my ex-wife looked at me and said, you're not going to make the time. When your mind knows it's not going to quit, and this is what I found out. This is my 40% rule. When your mind knows it's not going to quit, your body will adapt to whatever is in front of it. I ended up running 20 more miles. I did 101 miles in 19 hours and 6 minutes. And that one day changed, 19 hours. It wasn't SEAL training, it wasn't Ranger School, it wasn't Delta Force, it wasn't any of that crap I went through. It was this 19 hours and 6 minutes that forever changed my life to know that we as human beings are capable of anything. And we don't need any special kind of parents or tools to get there. Everybody's story does either harm or good to them. You have to go back in there, in that muck, face that muck, fix that. Because what happens is, when I was in Navy SEAL training, one of my jobs was to train guys to get through Navy SEAL training. And I started realizing that I was training these guys, they were getting bigger, stronger, faster, all this other stuff. But they would still quit. All I was doing was building bigger, stronger, faster quitters. And I started down, I was like, what the hell am I doing wrong, man? I was changing all the external crap. I wasn't going into the internal and changing what really matters. So that's what the first step is. And I talk about it a lot in my book about how, like the steps about doing that, man. But the first step you have to do is face yourself and be accountable for what you're not. So then you can be what you want to be. But first face what you're not. So I like Gary Vee, but I'm not tripling down on strengths. I'm tripling down on weaknesses.